Hi everyone, this is Father Doug and I am coming to you on this Thursday, the 23rd of April, and this is my weekly message. Let me begin with a few important updates. First of all, our bishop, in consultation with local health officials, has extended the closure of our churches and schools through the end of May. So for us here at Good Shepherd, that means that we will carry on with our virtual worship and other online gathering opportunities through at least May 31st. Secondly, there are a number of events and celebrations coming up that we would normally honor and recognize as part of our public worship. One of those is Mother's Day, coming up in just a few weeks. We would still like to have the opportunity to honor the mothers at Good Shepherd and in our local community. And so we are inviting you to send us a picture of your mom, of a mother in your family, maybe a woman who has been an influence in your life. We'd like to recognize them and celebrate them. And so send us their photograph at info@goodsheponline.org, and we will use those as part of a virtual recognition on Mother's Day. Thirdly, just a few updates about some things that we are doing here to reach out to our community. The Emergency Mask Ministry continues to make masks for our healthcare providers and essential workers. You can find out more information about that on our virtual church website. And of course, our food pantry remains open 2 days a week, Tuesdays and Thursdays from noon to 2. And so if you know someone who has a need, please let them know about this important resource. Now you may have noticed that I'm coming to you today from the chapel here in Good Shepherd. I am here in this space for a specific reason, and that reason is the altar that I'm standing in front of. Many of you know that this altar was built in the year 1901. It was used by a worshiping community called St. Martin's that was here in the Jupiter Tequesta area long before Good Shepherd was even thought of. As I reflected on this altar, I thought about the fact that people have gathered around this altar to worship, to pray, to laugh, to cry, to celebrate Holy Communion, to be nourished by God's presence. And they've done that through some of the most difficult and darkest times in our nation's history and indeed the history of the world. People gathered around this altar during the pandemic of 1918. People gathered around this altar during the course of 2 world wars. People gathered around this altar to worship and to pray during acts of terrorism and war, through depressions and recessions, and some of the most difficult times in our nation. People have gathered around this altar through some of the most challenging trials and tribulations in this world. And yet they gathered. They gathered to pray. They gathered to give thanks. They gathered because they knew that their source of hope, their source of encouragement, their source of peace came from the presence and power that they experienced and felt when they gathered around this altar. And when they gathered around this altar, they discovered more deeply and more profoundly the faithfulness of God. The faithfulness of God that sustained them through those challenges. And so what I've been thinking about this week is that God's people have been through a lot, and they've endured, and God has been faithful. And so even as we continue through this time of separation, through this time of pandemic, even as uncertainty continues, we can gather strength and hope and sustenance spiritually, emotionally, and even physically by knowing that God's people have been here before. This altar is a reminder that God's people have walked through the valleys and shadows of death before, and they've endured, and God has sustained them, and God has been faithful. And so I would encourage you this week just to think about where we are, where we're going, where we've been, and to think about where God's people have been in years past, and the endurance that they exemplify to us, and more importantly, the faithfulness of God that gives us hope and gives us peace. God bless you this week. I'll see you next Thursday on this channel.